The Red Hot Clearance event is on right now at Burlington, and I'm excited for the markdowns. It's all about savings on top of savings throughout the store. This is when I stock up on styles for my closet, home decor, and much more because there's up to 70% off other retailers' prices on clearance. I mean, I'm going every day because these prices, too hot to miss. Burlington. Deals, brands, wow. Styles and selections may vary by location.
Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
This is Optimal Finance Daily, Investing with Debt by Wanderer of millennial-revolution.com. We recently received an email from a reader that went something like this. Quote, I know your stance on buying a house, and I agree with your reasoning. However, I live in the Midwest of the U.S., where it's more financially sensible to buy a house instead of rent. I currently live with family while I'm paying off debt, and I'll be debt-free by the end of next year. Once my debt is paid, I plan to save more aggressively for retirement, increase my emergency fund from a couple months to a year, and save for a house. So my question to you, if given the opportunity, would you buy your first house in cash over getting a mortgage? End quote. Okay, first of all, great job on becoming debt-free. You deserve a pat on the back for that. Now, on to her question. It's no secret that we here at Millennial Revolution have certain opinions on housing. Hint, not a fan. Housing should be treated as a place to live, not as an investment. And in many high-cost cities, it makes much more sense to rent rather than own. But in certain cities, it might not be the worst idea. Justin McCurry from rootofgood.com bought his house in North Carolina for just $108,000. At that price, you won't blow up your retirement plan too badly. So in situations like this, where the housing costs are low enough for it to make sense and you have the cash, does it make more sense to take out a mortgage or just pay cash? If it were me, I'd always choose to pay cash. Here's why. We've all heard the arguments of why it supposedly makes mathematical sense to go into debt, or in this case, deliberately take on a mortgage to invest. If the interest rate on the debt is only 3 to 4% and markets give you gains of 6 to 7%, it makes sense to do it, right? Well, not really. That may have made sense before the financial crisis, when we believed the economy had 3 separate yet equally important groups: the job market, financial markets, and the housing market. But as we find out during the financial crisis, they're not separate, are they? In fact, they're linked. Now we know that when one falls, it can and will pull other parts down with it. A housing crash can roil the financial markets, which can spark massive layoffs, which cause housing to crash even more, which makes the financial markets plummet even more, and so on until we have a worldwide recession. It's in this situation when using debt to invest gets you into trouble. Index investing is, I believe, the most reliable and simplest way to generate long-term gains for retirement. But a core part of that strategy is that when your allocation drifts from your target, you're supposed to rebalance. This means selling stuff that went up and buying stuff that went down. And crucially, in a financial crisis like the one we experienced in 2008, that means selling bonds and throwing cash at equities as they plummet. It's not fun, but it does work, as we experienced firsthand when we got through the 2008-2009 crisis without losing any money using exactly this strategy. However, we wouldn't have been able to do this if we invested with debt. When financial companies run into trouble, it's entirely in their right to call whatever debt they have and force you to pay it off immediately. If this happens, you'll be forced to sell your equities to cover the debt, and that's exactly the worst possible time to sell. That's for HELOCs. For mortgages, the risk is similar because if the crisis gets bad enough that you lose your job, you'll fall behind on your mortgage payments and risk getting your house foreclosed, forcing you into the difficult situation of selling off assets at the worst possible time or losing your home. But if you had paid for the house with cash and you had a sufficient emergency fund, you could wait out the storm, not lose your house, and not be forced to sell your retirement portfolio until the job market picks back up. Now, there's a downside to paying with cash that you're probably noticing. The higher the home price, the more cash you need, and the more cash you don't have to invest for your retirement. And that's kind of the point. Home equity is dead money, and it will remain dead money that you can't access until you sell the house. So it makes sense to keep the money you spend on your house as low as possible. So that's why I'd pay with cash. It avoids debt, which would force you to sell your portfolio at a loss if a crisis happens. And it keeps you from buying too much house, which, as we've written time and time again, is an excellent way to blow up your retirement plan. You just listened to the post titled Investing with Debt by Wanderer of millennial-revolution.com. This message is brought to you by Apple Card. If you're like me, you might be considering getting a new iPhone. But have you considered upgrading your credit card? When you use your Apple Card with Apple Pay or the laser-etched titanium Apple Card, you can earn unlimited 3% daily cash back on everything you buy from Apple, whether it's a new iPhone, an iPhone case, or even a service like Apple Music or Apple TV Plus. Earning 3% back on the Apple products and services you love? It's an easy decision. You'll only wonder why you weren't doing it sooner. Subject to credit approval. Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com. Imagine you're a business owner who has to rely on a dozen different software programs to run your company, none of which are connected, and each one is more expensive and more complicated than the last. It can be pretty stressful. Now imagine Odoo. Odoo has all the programs you'll ever need, and they're all connected on one simple, easy-to-use platform, giving you peace of mind that your business is always being taken care of from every angle. Odoo has user-friendly, open-source applications for everything. We're talking CRM, accounting, inventory, manufacturing, marketing, HR, and everything in between. Basically, if your business needs it, Odoo's got it. Odoo sounds pretty amazing, right? So stop wasting your time and money on those expensive, disconnected platforms and let Odoo harmonize your business with simple, efficient software that can handle everything for a fraction of the price. It doesn't get much better than that. So what are you waiting for? Discover how Odoo can take your business to the next level by visiting odoo.com. That's ODOO.com. Odoo, modern management made simple. We talk about buying homes so much on this show because it's such a complex topic. First, you have to decide if you should even buy a house. Then you have to decide how much you can afford. And finally, if you will finance it or not. These are not easy questions, and I think everyone is going to have different answers based on their circumstances. I don't think anyone can tell you if you should buy a house or not. That's a personal decision, and there are so many variables to consider. You're the only person that sees the full picture of your situation, so you're really the only one that can make that call. But I do think getting exposed to how other people think about this decision for themselves can help us look at the various variables from different angles. Whether you buy or rent, housing is going to be an expense, just like any other expense. I think the key is to look at it like any other expense and consider how to optimize it and reduce it. And if you're going to buy a home, I think it's helpful to consider how much of your net worth will be tied up in that house if you're going to pay in cash. Many people who decide to pay off their mortgage or buy in cash don't consider that now their money is tied up in an illiquid asset. For me, I don't want more than 10% of my net worth in my house so that I can put the bulk of my money into income-producing assets. And that should do it for today. Have a happy rest of your day, and I'll see you on the Thursday show tomorrow, where your optimal life awaits.